start. Thank you. Welcome to this council meeting of Wyndham City Council this Tuesday, 21st December 2021. In the spirit of reconciliation, before we begin this meeting, I acknowledge the peoples of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which Wyndham is being built. We pay our respects to the elders, both past and present. Can you please stand for the opening prayer? We pray for guidance in the council's decision-making to achieve the best outcomes for the people of Wyndham. Please be seated. I would like to welcome members of the press gallery, councillors and staff in attendance here this evening. I also note we have councillors Mahfoud and Ramesh remotely. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the internet. The recording will be archived and made available on Council's website, whilst all care has been taken to ensure that your privacy is maintained. Please be aware that your presence may be recorded. Item 2 on the agenda, apologies. Mr CEO, do we have any apologies?
Yes, Mr Mayor, an apology from Councillor Susan McIntyre.
Okay, then there are no others. Councillors, can I have a mover, please, that the apology be accepted, please? Councillor Shaw. Seconder, please. Councillor Hill. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 3, declaration by councillors of disclosure of conflict of interest, conflicting personal interest in any item on the agenda. Any conflicts to declare, councillors?
In the second meeting.
Yeah, that's cool. We'll do that one later. So no conflicts. We'll move on. Item 4, reports. 4.1, council vaccinations. Report is on page 6 to 8, attachments 9 to 13. Councillors, we have a report before us. I hope that we keep it at a high level. Councillor Shaw, I believe you're moving this motion.
I am moving this motion, Mr Mayor, thank you. I would also like to put an amendment to the current motion that points 1, 2, 3 are removed, and I will include council laws have got an updated version of that amendment. That's the one.
Yep.
Would you like me to read it out, or can we agree that it is
as
read?
read?
Can we just read it out?
We'll read it out for the public. Yes,
Thank
please,
you.
Councillor Shaw.
Okay, thank you, Mr Mayor. The Council, 1, receives a report at the February 2022 Council meeting incorporating advice from Local Government Victoria and the Minister for Local Government outlining the legal and administrative options available to Council relating to unvaccinated councillors, both currently and following the expiry of the COVID-19 Omnibus Emergency Measures and Other Acts Amendment Bill 2020 in April 2022, with a view to managing the safety of residents, council staff and councillors. And point 2, writes to the Minister for Local Government to review the current arrangements around council meetings and prohibits the attendance of all unvaccinated persons.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. We have a seconder, councillors. Councillor Gillian. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, unfortunately, we are here again in relation to this issue. The resolution passed by Wyndham City Council on 30 November 2021 required the Mayor to write to any councillor who failed to provide proof of vaccination and encourage them to take a leave of absence until a response was received from the Minister for Local Government. Despite correspondence being sent to at least one Wyndham councillor, no councillor has taken a leave of absence in this matter. It is pleasing that correspondence has been received by the Minister for Local Government personally endorsing this council's actions and stating that councils are able to pass resolutions on this matter in accordance with Division 2 of Part 3 of the Local Government Act 2020, and I quote, "I support your positive actions and best efforts in community safety, just as I support the motion of the Legislative Council and Legislative Assembly on the vaccination of all members of Parliament." Part of the resolution tonight is to seek further advice to ascertain what specific action can be taken in accordance with the current legislation to assist Council in requiring councillors to be vaccinated to fulfil all of their duties. In other words, can we or the Minister legally stand down a councillor for not being double vaccinated? I know this and many new councillors will know this, that being a councillor is more than simply attending monthly council meetings. Councillors should be meeting with staff and residents, visiting businesses and attending stakeholder meetings and community events. We must be supporting our residents and businesses in a post-recovery with COVID, in person and generally not online. An unvaccinated councillor cannot perform these functions, and most of these cannot be done remotely. Why should a ratepayer have to dial into a meeting with an unvaccinated councillor because that councillor has chosen to wait for a fourth vaccine to be approved? Whilst provision has temporarily been put in place for councillors to attend council meetings virtually via the Omnibus Emergency Measures Act 2020, but when it was passed, we didn't have vaccinations. It wasn't put in place to support unvaccinated councillors. That was never the intent. This issue is not going away, especially considering the new Omicron variant and the fact that all levels of government are encouraging people, 90% of Australians are double vaccinated, to get their booster vaccination. I've had mine, and yet we're here talking about a councillor or councillors who are not being vaccinated at all. I believe in pro-choice, whether mandated or not, but with choices sometimes comes consequences, and this is an example of that. Being elected to represent your community is a privilege, not a right. When you take a ratepayer's allowance, you work for the ratepayer, not for yourself or your own self-interests. This council has worked hard to keep this community safe during COVID and has strongly supported our pandemic office. Yet, some around this table seem to think it is okay for an unvaccinated councillor or councillors to hold out for a vaccination that is not currently approved. The federal government website, I checked today, says the TGA is evaluating a protein vaccine developed by Novavax. It is not yet available in Australia. There is no timeline to say when it will be. Again, I would say it would be hypocritical for Wyndham City Council and all councillors here tonight to not take a stand requiring councillors who are elected by this community to be double vaccinated. The three councillors who are again signatories to this special council meeting clearly are concerned about the double standards here. Are we the only ones who really care about this? The importance of leading by example and doing what's in the best interests of this community. Let me be clear again. This issue is not going away, but it seems some councillors wish it would, in my opinion. Ratepayers should not be paying for an unvaccinated councillor or councillors to continue who is prepared to put the health and safety of our community, staff and councillors at risk by refusing to access the available vaccinations readily available in our community. It is entirely reasonable to expect any councillor who is not double vaccinated to consider their position as a representative of our community or be stood down. Council must continue to pursue this matter in the interests of community health and safety and to demonstrate that we lead by example. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Gilling, being the second, do you wish to speak?
I'll reserve my right.
Thank you, Councillor Gillian. Councillor, is there any further discussion on this matter? Anyone for this alternate, I should say? Councillor Hegeditch.
Thank you. When I read the request for a special council meeting notice that was sent to all councillors yesterday at 11:20 a.m, the first thing that sprung to my mind was the double jeopardy rule, which, for those that are not aware, is a legal concept where a person cannot be prosecuted or punished for the same offence twice. On the 30th of November 2021, this council made a decision to write to the Minister for Local Government and the Chief Health Officer with respect to unvaccinated councillors. Whilst I acknowledge there has been correspondence which has now been received from the Local Government Minister, the previous motion was seeking to again write to the Minister about the same issue, but this time requesting whether the Minister has powers under Section 228 to stand down an unvaccinated councillor. The Act is quite clear that the Minister cannot suspend a councillor under 228 unless paragraphs 224 1A 1 to 4 apply. The Supreme Court in the case of local government and Mohammed in November held that the legislative purpose for Division 6, i.e. sections 224 to 228 of the Act, is to provide a mechanism for ministerial oversight over the conduct of a councillor or council in the governance and integrity and performance of these governance roles. The section provides for standing down of a councillor via the ministerial intervention or oversight pathway, which requires the prerequisites set out in section 224 and the processes set out in the following provisions of the division. The process is one which is consistent with the stated legislative purposes set out in section 1 of the Local Government Act, being to secure the peace, order and good government of local government. My interpretation of section 59 of the Act, of which I believe is the pertinent part of Part 3, Division 2 of the Act, is that which the Minister makes reference to in his correspondence to the Mayor, is that Council can only make a resolution where the Council is empowered to do any act, matter or thing. The decision to do the act, matter or thing is to be made by a resolution of the Council. With the Supreme Court recently holding that the Act notes that the Council does not have the power to suspend a councillor, to me it is redundant for this Council to again seek to write to the Minister on the same facts and request the same things. I made my position clear on vaccinations on the 30th of November and I will not repeat it. I therefore thank the mover and the seconder for the amended motion, as this is one that I can and I will support tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Hegarich. Are there any speakers against this motion? Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a tough decision to make because health is involved. I have personally seen the disruption, the angst, and the personal costs the vaccine mandate causes. To stand down workers who have faithfully carrying out their roles is extremely sad and destructive to have to take, and many work sectors have implemented that. On the other hand, I also know residents who, despite double vaccinated, ended up in hospital, who is a friend of mine. Despite we like it or not, most of us, including myself, have taken the steps to be vaccinated. However, everyone is on a different journey because we don't know others' private health history. It has been difficult 2 years. All levels of government and our community have done really well in combating the virus. We are all in this together. We are trying our best. We can. We also have finally reached the vaccination rates that we were aiming for to ensure health and safety of our residents in the city. The COVID-19 Omnibus Act 2020 has made temporary modification of the law. Councillors have been carrying out their roles like much of the rest of the community by adopting an online presence and hybrid models. This meeting is an example of that. We have Councillor Mahfood and Councillor Ramesh online now joining us. So sensible provision has been made for this to be the case, and we are able to carry out our business without danger to health and safety. It's not only in council, all over Wyndham, our community has adapted the new normal of working over Zoom, over Teams. And although it has been tough, we've all been pulling together in that. Since unvaccinated councillors have been carrying out their roles, why would we go to extreme to preventing people from performing their roles? I don't believe we should, whether that is here in council or in a wider community. The advice for the wider community is that those of us working from home, regardless of our industry, are able to do so. And don't fall under the vaccine mandate. This is sensible advice, and I think should apply here. But here in council, there is additional reason why we should be reluctant to stand people down. Each councillor here is democratically elected. Yep. Each of us represent members of our community who voted for us. Each of us obtain much the same quota to be elected and gives a voice to a section of our community. Whether we agree with each other or not, places here in council should be decided democratically. If there was a practical risk to the community health here, I would take a different view. There surely be a due process then, but there is not. We should not be undermining the whole section of the community, depriving them of a voice. I'll be voting against this motion tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Any further councillors to speak for the motion? Councillor Gilligan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. In relation to Councillor Hill's comments, this is an important resolution that says that we don't endorse vaccine resistance, that we don't endorse a situation where elected representatives put people at risk in our community. As has been reported this afternoon, Councillor Mahfood, whilst unvaccinated, attended protests against the pandemic bill. That's yet a further example of bringing this council into disrepute. And so it's not just a sense now of being unvaccinated. This is essentially standing up and saying, not only do I not accept the wishes of the council in standing aside, who have clearly stated that people have died from this virus, that this has had significant damage to families in this city, but that we also respect and commend the 95% plus members of this community and growing who have done the right thing, who have stood up for their community, their families, their friends, their neighbours, took the vaccination that was afforded to them. And when you compare in contrast to the example before us now, we have an elected representative who is taking the privilege, because that's what this is. It is privilege. Privilege of the taxpayer to afford the opportunity. Now, I can assure you that as of mid this month, workers in this place, workers who have to pay bills and put food on the table too, are being stood down by this council. And here we are debating the merits of whether a councillor who should be held at a higher account, at a higher standard, because when we run for public office, we say we believe in things like integrity and ensuring that we represent the best interests of the community. The question before us is, if you want to put the health and safety of people in this community at risk, are you representing your community to the best possible standard that you are able to be? And that, in my opinion, is absolutely not being met in this instance. Now, as Councillor Shaw has rightly pointed out, the powers afforded to this council to deal with this matter are relatively narrow, but it is about a principled decision that is being made. It's about sending a message to our community that we are with you when you went out and got over the fear and the hesitancy and got vaccinated. And you might not have the privilege that Councillor Marfoot has here tonight, has a taxpayer-funded computer screen who can appear at these meetings virtually. But I tell you what, a worker that might be down at the depot who doesn't have that privilege, why are they any better than Councillor Marfoot? Because that's what this is about. Why are they being treated differently to Councillor Marfoot, who is elected, and they ultimately have a job that they are full-time committed to and ultimately will probably lose? So, in summary, I encourage councillors to vote for this on principle, on morality, and ensure that this issue does not go away and that we stand up for those people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gillian. Councillors, any further speakers against this motion?
Yes, I would. Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Councillor Mahfood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought at this stage I didn't say anything at the last special meeting, but I thought I should say something in this meeting because I believe this is an attack on myself more than anything else. I don't think it's about the health and safety or well-being of the community. I believe this is simply politically motivated. I've stated publicly I'm yet to be vaccinated. Yes, that's true. However, this doesn't mean that I'm not planning on being vaccinated at all. I've mentioned it. Councillors were aware of this. All councillors were aware of this even before the previous special meeting that I'm waiting on the Novavax vaccine. Yes, I am not vaccine resistant, but vaccine hesitant. Yes, I am. I'm waiting for this product. There has been talk. The health minister himself, Greg Hunt, came out and said it should be available by Christmas. It's on the cusp of being approved. It's been approved by who? By the EU, which normally Australia follows that. I understand some of the comments of some of the councillors, but a lot of it, I believe, again, it's just an attack on myself, an attack on the due process. I'm able to attend all meetings virtually. I'm able to fulfil most of my role virtually. Yes, as it was stated in the original motion, that it's not all about attending meetings. Being a council is not all about attending meetings. There's a lot more to that. I just can't attend events, and I understand that. I understand events is part of what we do, and I will be able to once I get vaccinated, once I'm back on board. But at this point, I'm able to conduct all, if not all, most of my duties online. A lot of my meetings I'm conducting online. I'm able to liaise with residents, emails, everything else I'm able to do. I'm able to do in a virtual capacity, and I'm still doing that. I'm still fulfilling my role to my full capacity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Mahfood. Councillors, are there any further speakers for the motion? Councillor Barrera.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I won't repeat what I said at the November meeting. It's pretty clear that I voted in favour of it last time. I do agree that as leaders of this community, we do have a duty of care to set an example. I would point out that this alternative motion is quite different from how it read earlier. It is broader than one councillor. I have to disagree with Councillor Mahfood about this being a personal attack. It's not a personal attack, in my opinion. It is about principle, and it is about our role as leaders in this community. And point 2 of this alternate motion goes much broader than simply focusing on councillors. So I would urge other councillors to look carefully at that and to see that this is really a more general and a broader ask that I think is important for us to consider. It is possible. I take on board Councillor Mahfood says TGA approval is imminent, but approval for this vaccine has been a long time coming. It may not happen as quickly as Councillor Mahfood thinks, and we could be waiting quite some time. So we do need some direction as to where we go, not just for councillors, but in general terms, once the omnibus emergency measures cease to exist. I think it's worth getting a report, it's worth getting some guidance and taking that into account. And I urge people to just see it that way so that we can get some guidance to move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrera. Councillor, any further speakers against this motion? Any further speakers for it? Councillor, excuse me.
Thank you. I'd like to congratulate Councillor Shaw, Gilligan and Barrera for their speeches tonight. What Mia and Jenny have said is completely correct. We certainly need guidance in moving forward. I'd like to let you all know that we have so much coronavirus in this city. I do not want to go out anywhere. We are an eatery down in Main Street, 10 people went, 7 ended up with the virus. In the Park Hotel last weekend, Corpus Christi College. So we need to be the leaders. We need to show them that we are willing to stand up and be vaccinated. I've sat with families that lost both their mothers and fathers. And if you had to do that, Councillor Mahfood, perhaps you would think differently. There is no sign of the Novavax at this stage. You can walk down to the chemist, you can walk in clean, beautiful conditions, have your vaccination and be done with it. Yes, I was rather frightened to go and get my booster the other day because I had to change from AstraZeneca, but I did it because I care for my community, and everywhere I have been, they've all said the same thing. Heather, thank you for standing up for us all. And today, the flowers that came to my house, the Christmas packs saying, thank you for being such a good councillor and standing up for what you think throughout the year. So please, Marcel, go to the chemist shop, start getting your vaccination so that you can then go out and work with all the community. Go out and see what they're suffering. We've lost customers because we will not take anyone that's not vaccinated. And all the businesses down the main street are the same. Why should they be suffering because people will not get vaccinated and we get back to a normal life? And so these are all the hardships that the business people are going through at this stage. So as far as I'm concerned, let's lead.
1 minute, Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's lead by example and show the people that we care for them. And that's what I intend to do for my next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Councillors, any further speakers against the motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor
I'd like
Mesh.
to against the motion. Thank you. Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we all know our responsibilities and commitments to the community here. So I think, yeah, that's not something that needs to be repeated 100 times. So I respectfully ask the councillors raising these special motions to do their homework prior to raising these motions and consuming our time. This is the second special meeting requiring an urgent major change to the motion at the last minute and ignores the available information that justifies both the council's past actions, the reasons for state and federal government actions, and the councillors' statements of intent. It is inappropriate that we are asked to vote on motions that have less than due time to be considered diligently. If the councillors in question were serious about setting a good example for our community to follow, then we should not be hunting down further cases where discretion leads to forcing people out of their jobs. It is not my position to force someone out of a job. It is not the position of other councillors to force someone out of a job. We have experts hired to make the decisions as to which workplaces need to take those difficult decisions that impact livelihoods of workers and their rights to free action and free speech. I respectfully ask my fellow councillors to withdraw their actions under the pretense that they know better. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ramesh. Any further speakers on this, councillors? Councillor Shaw, given there was
thank you, Mr.
speaker
Mayor.
against,
It's always nice getting a right of reply, I must admit.
the handball gift.
Yes, sometimes it is. This is not a personal attack or politically motivated. I'm a little unsure where that's coming from. We've never actually named Councillor Mahfood in any of our special council meetings. He did that himself, so I'm not really sure how or why he would think that it would be a personal attack or politically motivated. I think that is an absolute ridiculous comment to make. And quite frankly, Deputy Mayor Hill, it is not a tough decision to make at all. And I think Councillor Barrera has summed up in terms of how we are. We did make a change to the motion because we got feedback from councillors and we took that on board. And that's actually a good process of governance to follow to ensure that people are comfortable with the motion that we are putting forward. And I thank those councillors for giving us their feedback in relation to that. We are elected leaders, and this notice of motion is actually about, and we've said it before, leading by example. And quite frankly, it's something that unfortunately I haven't seen a lot of this first year on council term. And I don't think people do understand their commitments. So I think it is important to reiterate what those commitments are and what obligations you have to the ratepayer, not to yourself, not for your self-interests, not for maybe deals that you've done with other councillors to ensure that you're all supporting each other through this very difficult situation. This is a difficult...
Councillor Ramesh.
Councillor Ramesh.
Councillor Ramesh, state your point of order, Councillor Ramesh.
Governance Rule 38, not speaking to the motion.
It's a right of reply, Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me, Councillor Shaw.
Doesn't deny there's a deal.
Excuse Councillor Gilligan. Thank you very much. Councillor Ramesh, please finish.
Yep, so Governance Rule 38, not speaking to the motion. This motion is not about deals, and this is misleading.
I agree.
These are comments. Yep.
Continue,
Thank you,
Councillor Shaw.
Oh, well, I've already got it onto the record, so I think we've
that's
made
fine.
that point.
Whether
So-
it's on the record or not, it's irrelevant.
Oh, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. But ultimately, in the end, this isn't about self-interest. It is about representing the ratepayer who actually pay your salary every fortnight that comes into our account. And unfortunately, there'll be some of our council employees who won't get that opportunity over this Christmas period. So I think it's something that we all should be thinking about. And on a final note, I do just want to say that the Herald Sun did run an article today on Novavax. It was run this afternoon. And it says, it is unclear if it would be used for primary doses, booster shots or both, but the Health Minister, Greg Hunt, has said it could potentially be used as a booster. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillors, have been no further speakers. I put the alternate motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? One, two, hang on, let's do that again, I didn't count. All those for? 1, 2, 5, 6. Against? 1, 2, 3, 4. The alternate is carried.
Call for a division, Mr. Mayor, please.
All those in favour, who voted? Councillor Gilligan, Councillor Maynard, Councillor Shaw, Councillor Marcus, Councillor Hegeditch, Councillor Barrera. Against? Against. Councillor Mahfood. Councillor Ramesh, you voted against? I can't see your hands. Oh, sorry, I couldn't see your hand. My apologies. Councillor Hill and Councillor Zatkowski. Thank you, councillors. What have we got? That's it. Okay. Councillors, there being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 6:45. Thank you. Add or anything on that? Please do so.